what is this fame thing? What is it? Is it because we don't have royalty? Is it because we need to believe in somebody who more people know than know us? I'm the first person to ever do this, the first person to walk on a high wire between the two towers. That shows you how long ago that was. A journalist in me would find these people who had no idea that what they did was even interesting to anybody else. And we had this gala, thing every year, and we would give them Hatebreaker Hero Awards.
Hi, this is Mish Hancock, and you are listening to MichMash, a place where I get to talk to the weird, wacky, wonderful people of this world, people I adore and want to know more about. Today, my guest is Susan Balk. Susan is the founding director of Hatebreakers, an organization that celebrates those who end the hate breeds hate cycle and hits the brakes on hate. She was also recently named as a Woman of Achievement, and there is a lot that this woman has done and is doing. I am very honored to have you as a guest, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is so exciting for me. So let's start. Woman of Achievement, tell me about the what all happened, how this came about.
I don't know. I've lived in St. Louis for less than 20 years. And
Okay.
no going to high school here, none of that stuff. So I was just amazed to be included in something that I thought was as rarefied as, I don't know, the veiled prophet thing, that you had to have grown up here and done some distinguished background thing. But I really feel that they understood and appreciated the work that I've done, especially the work with Hate Breakers.
Which
And
is amazing. I love this whole thought of hate breakers. Let's talk about that.
yeah. Oh, I should talk about it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You talk about
Okay.
it.
Well, I just always wondered, I never really understood what made people be mean to each other. It always kind of interested me. And my mommy used to say, oh, Susie, don't be so sensitive. It's just, you'll be fine. Or they'll be fine. But I'll just give a little background before I started Hate Breakers. I was a journalist, and it was at the time when, being in New York with the media was just, you just felt like the center of the universe. And
Well, can we just say that you were a journalist with a lot of rather amazing places, right? I mean, you would name some of them. They're all recognizable.
what the places I worked or the places I
Yes, and who
published,
you wrote
uh,
for or edited
the
for.
New York Times Magazine, Vogue, Playboy, Ms.,
I
whoever,
mean,
Rolling
come
Stone,
on.
whoever would return my phone calls
You were
back
at
in the
the
day
you
when
were
we
at
made
the
phone
center of the
calls.
universe, right?
Yeah, and I got to teach journalism at Columbia in New York, and just loved it. The whole idea. Well, it's like what you do now in the 21st century. You get to ask people questions,
Yes.
and you get to tell the world about them, and
Yes.
you get to do it from your point of view. So maybe if I'd been lucky, and if I was a person, maybe a generation younger, I'd hope to be doing something like what you're doing.
Right.
But
Ooh, it's fun.
yeah, but that was back in the day, what we called the new journalism. So the first book I did, because I used to think, how come if I see a famous person in person, it seems deeply, deeply significant. What is this fame thing? What is
Yeah.
it? Is it because we don't have royalty? Is it because we need to believe in somebody who more people know than know us? What is that about? So that was my first book. And, that was a chance to call up just anybody and say, um, tell me about yourself and what does it feel like to be famous? Um,
That is awesome. And
yeah,
so and that book was called Fame.
it was called Fame, and it was a way of looking both at the famous person and the person in the audience. So I looked in New York, where fame was getting there first. The first person to ever do this, the first person to walk on a high wire between the two towers. That shows you how long ago that was, of the
Right.
World Trade Center. Fame in Washington was power or access to power or the appearance of access to power. So that was a lot of fun. That made for great stories. And then in Los Angeles, where fame just had a lot to do with image and the
Right.
dances that go with image. So it was wonderful. It was a chance for this little, Midwestern shy person to investigate this, and people actually talked to me and met with me, and it got a lot of play. I got 5 pages in People magazine, and the
Oh,
talk shows and stuff.
wow.
So my little Midwestern dream came true. And then I don't know, I kept writing and doing other things.
But can I ask you something? Because this is really intriguing to me.
Sure.
First of all, who did you get to talk to?
Well, I mean, I'm they're so last century. Let's see. Um,
I probably know him.
let's see. Paul Newman,
Oh,
Truman Capote,
wow.
Bette Midler. I'm so dating myself. I can't believe it.
But this is good. And hey, Bette Miller's got something new out on HBO. So
Yeah,
hello.
she's
I just
terrific.
watched it. Coastal Elites. It's fabulous. But yeah.
Um,
So when you did this book though, let me ask you, did
sure.
you because I find this subject crazy interesting. Why do I see a famous person? I'm like, oh, it's so and so, and you get all and I always wonder if a part of it is that they had you have to I feel like you have to have a lot of guts to put yourself out there like that and a
Well,
lot of
I think it's a double.
confidence.
I think it's a
Okay.
double. I think that both the audience and the person on the stage will say, we buy into this myth, and I think it was given to us, by the movies, that somehow if we're famous, we're immortal. That somehow if we're known by enough people, we're not going to die.
Got ya.
And, I think that's part of the appeal of that Turner Classic Movies thing. We get to see, I can't say I watch everyone, but it's fascinating to see, I don't know, Charlie Chaplin on a great big screen. I never saw, I always saw him little,
Right,
or,
right.
anybody young. And it's like it is like they're immortal, because those images, thanks to Ted Turner, I guess, are permanent. They're not
Right,
going to go away.
right.
So I think that's part of what, oh, I want to be on the big screen, so I'll last forever. And it was um it was dazzling, but there were some times that being the famous person could be distorting or startling. And one well-known comic told me that he was walking with his son on the beach in Malibu, and somebody came up to him and said, "Oh, I know who you are. I love you." And his little boy said, "Daddy, how could he love you? He doesn't even know you." And I don't know how he explained it to his son, but the man believed that he knew
Right,
him. And
right.
so, and then another time he told me he was sitting with his family at a restaurant, and somebody came up to him and said, "That new series you're doing, it's just not working. Here's what you should do." This total stranger. And so what I realized is that I think the guy thought he was helping maybe, but there is this combination of love and contempt, of adoration and contempt. And so, um, and I think to this day, we feel that about really famous people.
Well,
Um,
we do. I noticed one of the things we do is we build them up, but then we also we want to watch them crumble because
that's
I
right.
feel like that's something that happens. And And I gotta think, I mean, today it's so interesting how you can be on social media connected with, you can follow them, and that's become a whole thing, right? I mean, where there are celebrities that just they do their Instagram this and that's all day long. That's what they put amazing amounts of time into one picture and what they're going to say. And I just,
And even politicians, we won't name anyone, you know, who demonstrates power by saying whatever he wants to say at that moment
yes,
on
whatever's
Twitter,
on the
and
top of
that
mind.
becomes the news, doesn't it?
Right.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And
It's
so I
very
think,
interesting.
I mean, I think that it's not a happy episode in sort of that dance of publicity and exploiting and gobbling up, you know, those of us in the audience just seem to gobble that stuff up. So as much as I love and enjoy social media, I'm concerned, as I'm sure you are, like, how do we deal with inaccuracies? You know,
Yes.
we want to read what we
Yes.
want to read. We want to see what we want to see.
Truth has become a topic of many conversations for me lately, because I it freaks me out that I'm pretty sure I don't know the truth about anything anymore because of what's out there. You don't know. And then, when you learn like what you're being fed is exactly what you want to hear, so then it's easy for everybody to say, well, I'm right because I
Exactly.
read it. And so and
I read it, so it's
yeah,
true,
and
right?
I read it, and I saw this whole article about it or a show about it, and I'm
Yeah,
thinking, I don't really know what the truth is at all anymore.
right. Well, I remember the first time I heard Kellyanne Conway say, well, that was an alternate fact.
Oh, right, right, right. Yes, an alternate fact. That's an interesting thing to talk about. That was
Yes,
an alternate fact. What?
yeah,
What does that even mean?
yeah.
And languaging is, I mean, as you know, as a journalist and writer, language has got a lot of power.
Yeah.
So you wrote this amazing book, Fame, and then how did that, and then all these other things you've done, and how did that get you to Hate Breakers? Because I'm
Well,
with you. I have a hard time understanding why people hate.
well, great. And we've got a lot in common. So
Yeah.
as so right after I published the book Fame, I married this fabulous, talk about words. I had a wonderful relationship in marriage to a man who was a Jewish Viennese refugee.
Okay.
And he worshiped America. I mean, if I would say something like, oh, that would only happen in America, he would say, do you have any idea what you're saying? Um, I would try to be, I don't know, it was obnoxious. So he decided that he wanted to go back to Vienna and photograph and interview people just sort of on the street and find out how that whole Hitler thing had looked to him now. So he
Right.
did that. And the book was published. And it actually wasn't published until he died. And I moved to St. Louis. I was in San Francisco. So it was a book called Vienna's Conscience. Um, and somebody took a look at it and said, oh, that would be a great exhibit at the Holocaust Museum here. Well, it was an
Right.
exhibit and it went all around the world. It went to Shanghai and it went to San Francisco and it went, well, first when it was in Vienna, it was in Freud's, in Freud's office. I mean, thrilling. And then it became a permanent exhibit at the United Nations in Vienna. Now, Ricky didn't get to see any of that, but
Right. Oh
so,
my
so,
gosh.
but a thing that he and I always talked about was how can hate take over a whole continent?
Right.
Also, how can people like this Catholic family who hid our aunt and uncle during the Nazi time? They lived across the street from a police station. They had two little kids that went back and forth to school every day, never said anything. How, how does that come out? How do people resist it and,
Right.
hit the brakes,
Rise above it and say,
rise
I'm
above
not going to
it?
hate, and I know this is wrong.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So at the exhibit in here in town, I heard a couple, you always listen to what people are saying about what you did. And I heard this couple say, oh, those damn Viennese. And I thought, well, my job's not done because of course it's not just the Viennese, it's all of us
Mm-hmm.
who, when there's something unpleasant in our background, don't want to talk about it. So I thought, okay, how do we make this more universal? And so the journalist in me thought, let's find a lot of people who have experienced hate either as victims or perpetrators or witnesses. And instead of being defined by that trauma in a negative way, decided to try to fix things so it was not likely to happen to anybody ever again. And so with the encouragement and support of my now husband, the reason I moved to St. Louis, Ken Balk, we put together this organization called Hate Breakers. And the journalist in me would find these people who had no idea that what they did was even interesting to anybody else. And we had this gala, thing every year, and we would give them Hate Breaker Hero Awards.
Oh, wow.
And it was it was just a wonderful experience. I mean, some of them were well known, some of them didn't even want to let me interview them because the experience they had been through wasn't something they could talk about without shaking.
Right.
And so that's what Hate Breakers is. And it was hard because at the beginning people said, well, why do you have the word hate in the name? What good does that do? It's such an awful word. Now, of course, nobody asks that question.
Right.
So anyway, you can go to our YouTube and see you can see the edited down interviews because, of course, as you know, as a journalist, what we're doing is, our fave thing to do.
Right.
So, the interviews themselves were much longer, but we edited them down to, I don't know, 3 to 4 minutes, something.
Oh, wow.
And I can just tell you, if I may, about three of the interviews.
Yeah, I want you to. That was
I
one of
mean,
my
you're going to have to
questions for
stop me
you.
because each of the people, it just thrills me. But let's see. So, I don't know if did your parents make you learn Puff the Magic Dragon?
Yes.
Okay, so the first year we gave an award to Peter Yarrow
Okay.
because he had a very traumatic childhood. He had a tough childhood in terms of being rejected and made fun of, and then he became such a creative force, and the work that he does now, that he helps kids write songs about hate, or and anyway, he's been a great friend, and it was an honor that he came to accept the award. And then that same year we had a young Palestinian American, she was a student at Webster, who, when she was little, a boy who she walked back and forth to school every day, one day after they reached his house, he turned around and he spit on her. And he said, go back to your own country. And she said, I was born here. You know, what's that about? So she went
Yeah.
home and so she went to the Middle East and she helped Palestinian children have experiences with the other side that they might not have had, you know, taking them to villages, doing these various things. And she's one of my heroes.
Wow.
Then two people who Hate Breakers is now kind of colluding with. One is a woman who I'd love to introduce you to named Teresa Bradley, who has an organization that she started after Michael Brown was killed called Communities in Unity.
Very cool.
And one of the things she did that I love is she got a bunch of young people at the library there to write poems about how they felt now and how the world looked to them. So Hate Breakers worked with them to, you know, get that published. And but she's always working to unite communities and to, especially for teenagers, she's very, very concerned with how can we help these teenagers get out of the limits that
That is a
they're born
really good
into.
thought because
Yeah,
it's true. My daughter, her and I lived in Jefferson County for a long time. You know, I'm a little bit worldly, so she got to see a lot more. Um, and it's amazing to her still, where she's just like, they're they just I feel like some of these kids, they're just going to grow up in that town, stay in that town, never leave that town. And you know, she feels like it's obvious with some that they just, because they have not gone out and had experiences with different types of people that
right,
don't look like them, that
right.
that's part of the problem. Because then those people become the
Yep,
they over there,
yep,
that are different than me, and they don't understand that the they is us. There's a
exactly.
lot more, we are a lot more alike than people
Oh,
know.
she's so right. And you know, in order for us to feel okay about ourselves, then the they people have to be creepy or something, you know,
Right, which is so
for us to be
horrible.
okay.
And I think there's a thing to be said for, I have a thought that, you know, whenever I meet someone, I automatically love them. You know, I'm like, right when I'm like, I love you and let's be friends. You know, now I also say some people prove to me later that maybe we shouldn't be friends. But my first thought is,
Your go-to,
you
yeah,
know, I love you. Let's, you know, you're a human, I'm a human. We're here on earth together right now, having
yeah,
a very interesting time. Let's hang out, you know. And but I know and I feel that that a lot of people start with, I don't trust you. Prove yourself
right.
to me first before we can be buddies.
Well, you are clearly in the right line of work. How old is your daughter now?
She's 18.
Oh, perfect. Oh, I'd
Yeah,
love to meet her.
18, and she's very outspoken about, you know, when someone is saying anything that she feels is not, um what other people, what she feels that they need to hear, that they need to understand, you know, she'll say it. And I mean, I don't want to paint Jefferson County as a terrible, I have amazing friends from there that are very open-minded and also, you know,
Sure.
worldly. It's just she's bumped up, and I think, I don't care where you live, or, you know, it could be just within your own school, that if you haven't experienced enough of other people, and please go travel somewhere outside of the United States, because I feel like that is one of the things that will really open your eyes to understand, go understand another culture,
Right, right, right.
you know. So I love what you're doing, and I
Thank
thank
you.
you, Susan, for doing it. It's
Thank you. May I
amazing.
tell you about one more person?
Oh my gosh, we're not done. Yes, because
Okay,
I
good.
still have other questions for you.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll just tell you about this. Not that I have favorites, but Sammy Rangel. Um, based in Chicago, had the worst childhood that imaginable in terms of violence, in terms of predatory stuff
Oh.
that was done to him. He ran away from home. He joined white supremacist gangs. He was in prison for a really long time. And now he was a founder of and now runs an organization called Life After Hate. And they work with members of white supremacy gangs, both in and out of prison, and help them, I'm going to say detox. I don't think that's the word that he
Oh,
would
I
use.
think that sounds like a good word for it, though.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's just astonishing. And you know, he calls me his Jewish mother. We've become really close, he and his whole family. But his journey, he actually did a TED talk in Europe somewhere. He was honored by the United Nations. And
Oh my gosh.
just a little bit of history. I think this is public. About a little over 4 years ago, I guess near the end of the Obama administration, his organization was awarded a large grant to work against violent extremism. That's what he was
That's
awarded
amazing.
by the UN. But wait, but then when the new president came in, his administration decided that they only wanted to work against, what's the word? Muslim violent extremism. So they took, you know, this administration didn't honor that grant. Now, 4 years later, he was given the award again because I think it's become obvious that that work needs to be done and needs
It
to be
does
supported.
need to be done. I mean, oh, and I'm an optimist. I mean, I really hope that I hope that we get to a more loving place in everything that we do as people. And it's one of the reasons why I do TEDx is I feel like it is all about evolving, which is
Absolutely.
really important to me. Like, how about we evolve? That would be a good idea,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, so I have this other question for you because I mean this is just so interesting that you were an editor for Playboy.
I
Tell
was
me.
the nonfiction editor.
Okay.
And as I always insist, and everybody know that the girly stuff was done in Chicago and LA, and I was their New York person.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it was the best job because I got to call up anybody that interested me, you know, always still being a fame freak, and say, would you write for us? May we interview you? If you have a book coming out, could we excerpt that book? And I always, sort of the way I do, well, never mind about that. I understood both sides of the argument. That
Gotcha.
Playboy humiliated women and made men do bad things to women, but also, as some of the posers, some of the playmates had said, you know, this is a way for me to show who I am, to show myself, to be free and to make some good money. So my feminist friends didn't always see it the way I saw it, but they knew I was having a great time. And even my husband, my late husband, said, you're going to last here 6 months. You know, this is so not you. But I just thought it would be a great way to bring my sensibility, you know, to the magazine. And I did. I got to be was asked to be on the Playboy Foundation board, and it was a great experience for me.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, and I was their liaison with the publishing world and with writers and with personalities. It was so cool, that
Did you
time when
ever work
everything
with
was in
Hugh? Did you
person.
like know Hugh?
I I really didn't. I was friends with Christy, his daughter, but
Okay.
Hef, as everyone had to call him. I'd met him, but I just wasn't. I mean, I don't think that we had a lot to say to each other. He was smart, and he's the guy that figured out that you could have sort of combined sexual liberation with high end writing and thinking,
Right.
and
Right.
and it worked for a while. It really worked nicely.
How interesting.
Yeah, it was fun, and it was fun to be a little out of the box. I was when I'd go to meetings, it was, well, she's from New York, and well, she's Gloria Steinem, but I would say, his theory that liberation is not limited to just one avenue. It worked for a while.
Right.
It,
Right.
and it was great for me to have a chance to do it. Then I started my own business, and I was a liaison between publishers and magazines, and then I started working for this thing called the internet. I don't even know if it was called the internet yet, but to try to help people do digital work
Yeah.
that we
Well,
could
you
print
help
on
them to
paper.
pivot from
Yeah, it
print
was
to,
fun.
and that's
I
so amazing.
Yeah, I get
You're
to
at the
do
forefront of
great
some cool
stuff.
stuff, ma'am.
Yes, thank you. You hear
So,
you call me ma'am, and my stomach tightens, and then I have
why
to
you
say,
call
no,
everybody
no, no.
ma'am?
Then I know
It
it's a
doesn't matter
respect
your
thing. I
age.
know, I get it, but I think I'm almost old. That's how I think of myself. I'm almost old. Get used to it, Susie. You're lucky.
We,
Your
the,
parents didn't get to have golden years. It's this pandemic thing. You get to live in a great house with somebody you're really nuts about. And I think about people out there who are stuck, who don't have enough food, who don't even
yeah,
have a house, and are stuck with somebody that they're not fond of.
it's a weird thing because we I was talking about this the other day. A friend of mine was like that I hadn't heard from in a while. We caught up with each other and she's like, "How are you anyway?" And we were both like, I mean, if there wasn't a pandemic and all this crazy stuff going on in the world, I would say I'm doing great. But
Right.
it's also hard to say I'm doing great when there's a pandemic and all this crazy stuff going on in the world. And so it's very interesting. I feel like I'm kind of in my own little bubble.
But look at what you've created. Look at this bubble that you've created.
It's
It's
a happy bubble.
perfect.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a happy bubble.
I'm not going to say we're the same person, but I mean, you've done what I just admire your figuring it out. Look at, you're sitting there in your own private space. I'm sitting in mine's a little more cluttered than yours. What can I tell you?
You were,
But
I said in the
but I
beginning,
mean,
you're a
here we
well-read
are,
woman. Look at all those books.
right? And I don't know anybody else that I can, have the same rapport in, being fascinated with people I've never met, as you are.
Right.
Um,
Well, yeah, we love it. I mean, I'm like you. I'm kind of a fame freak as well. I get really like caught up with certain famous people and have to watch all the things that they've done, and I find them so
yes.
fascinating. And who are
Like
you
who?
into
Like
now? Who's
who
your
are the ones you're caught up with now?
Well, in fact, last night my daughter and I were talking about. I was like, "Gosh, if Nicole Kidman is in something, I'll watch it." Like,
Yeah.
I just think she's amazing, so I will definitely watch it. And then we are also really into anything. Let's see. Well, there's this show on HBO called Lovecraft Country, which is fascinating.
Is it? I haven't watched that one.
Fascinating. Now, I don't know exactly. It's by the same producers as the movies that Jordan Peele did. One was called Get Out, and one was called Us. But
Oh,
Jordan Peele is another one that I'm just fascinated with Jordan Peele. So if he's doing anything, I have to know about it.
yes.
Um, how about you? I mean, who are you a fame freak for right now?
Right now, I'm interested in Sacha Baron Cohen because he never does the same thing twice. And I
I
just saw he
just
was on
watched
Stephen
it. I
Colbert thing
did you
last
did
night.
you
I don't
watch
know
the
if it's,
latest one, the latest movie?
yeah, yeah. Well, I watched half of the latest. I
Oh,
watched
I
the
won't. Yeah, I won't.
Chicago, 7 one, um,
That was a good one.
which was a good one. And I watched part of Borat. That's, what is it, the new
The
movie,
subsequent
whatever you
movie
call it, the
film.
subsequent movie. Yeah.
Right.
And I'll watch the rest of it tonight probably.
It's
But he's
it's pretty
interesting
wow.
because he claims that he didn't want to be famous, and that there was a great profile of him in the New York Times Magazine recently, which of course I only read digitally now. But he's a many-faceted man and a many-faceted actor. Um, so
I
let's see, I'm
agree.
interested in him right now. Um, we just finished watching Designated Survivor. Did you, with Kiefer Sutherland, who never interested me before, but it's
I
like
have not watched
this.
that
It's
one.
like, for me, because I didn't watch it when it was in real time. Um, it's like today's West Wing. Um, it's it's
Okay.
that's all I'll say. And so I just thought, oh, he's one of those cute boys. But now that's what you say when you're almost old. Um, but he became the producer and the director, I think, as well as the star. And it's about this guy who was fairly low on the totem pole, who was the only one who survived this horrible bombing of, and like everything else, you have to give the writers a couple episodes to,
Yeah, you can't just expect to get into it right away. You got to give it time.
yeah. So now I'm going to forget later what I wanted to say. Oh, I don't know. I love this thing, Vera. Um,
I don't
and
know Vera.
now
I'm gonna have
I,
to start taking notes so I
we
know
have to
what to
talk.
be
Yeah.
watching right
I mean,
now.
not that we're not talking. Um, but there's one that's on Hulu about a woman, I'm going to say your age, who finds herself, she always got all A's and did everything fine, but she's got this job. She wanted to get into publishing, and she has to go get coffee for people. And she realizes that she made a lot of mistakes in her life. And so this sort of, I don't know if he's a phantom or not, but this combination guru and therapist enters her life in all different forms. Sometimes he's a hot dog vendor, sometimes and he arranges for her to have do-overs.
Oh my gosh, cool.
So in high school and so on. And I think it's such a, the writer in me thinks, oh, I wish I'd thought about that premise. It's such a good premise.
No
Um,
kidding.
and I can't think of what the name of it
Vera.
is.
And that one's called Vera on Hulu.
No, no, no. Vera is about, pardon me while I do this because I have to be able to tell you. But
Yeah, I want to
I'm sorry.
know.
I'm allowed to, I'm almost old, so I'm allowed to forget
You are allowed to forget.
things.
I forget many times and I'm almost old too. So there you
You're
go.
almost. Yeah. Yeah. So, is that everything? I think that
I
might
think we're good.
be.
Susan, I thank you. This has just been, I love this, our conversation. It was a great conversation.
I agree.
I think I'm going to have to come over and hang out with you once the
I want you
pandemic's over.
to. I
Definitely.
want you
We have
to.
like the same, we
Why did
we
we
have the
have to
same
meet like
taste.
the day that it got cold?
Well,
So
I
we can't
know,
just meet out on our deck.
but it was good. We were supposed to meet at some point, right?
Yes, I
I love it.
totally agree.
I
And
love it.
I'm grateful to Josh for bringing us together.
Thank you, Josh Lovey. Yes, I was so excited. I was like, oh, I know Susan. I can introduce you. I'm like, yay, I really want her on my
Yeah,
podcast. Thank you.
sure.
So
And stay in
fascinating.
touch. If you want to meet any of the um, other women of
Women,
achievement
I
or any of these
do. We
eighth
will, you
graders,
and I will be in contact to talk about that and more.
my new best friend.
I love
Thank
it.
you.
Mwah. Thank you, Susan Balk. Thank you so much. Have a fabulous time. Everybody do check out Hate Breakers. And for all of you out there, you've been listening to MichMash Podcast. We love you. Have awesome days. Bye.
Bye.
We did it.
Bye.
Thank you, Susan.